Hello, 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 everybody. Good old Terry coming at you pre-recorded from Rebel Rooster Studi Garage here. Hey, pretty excited today. This is the last day. I'll have to use my make-believe shaky camera stand so I can get some better video shots for you from different angles. And today also I'm going to be getting some editing software, which being technologically challenged might take me a little while to get good at, but hopefully get you some better videos than looking at this and looking at my green mat from the same two angles. Hey, we have gotten through the first part of the Tamiya Acrylics, and as you remember, we were just doing the bare knuckles mix shoot. We weren't doing anything special like giving each coat enough time to dry and everything. We were just showing super basic stuff. And you remember I told you that that pebbling on the aft section of the fuselage was gonna settle down. I should start calling it orange peel. I mean, that's what it's called. It's orange peel. But when I look at it, I just think of pebbles on the beach because, you know, out here in the desert, water's enticing and you think of that kind of thing. But anyhow, you can see it, for the most part, it's all settled down nicely and it's nice and creamy and smooth. Patience pays, right? So we waited it out. But anyway, even that, I mean, it looks pretty good, but I mean, it's going to look a lot better when we start doing things right, which is exactly what we're going to be doing in this second episode. We're going to be doing the shooting techniques the proper way, so you can see how to get the best finish from these Tamiya Acrylics. We're also going to we're going to be taking out the clears. You see, I got 5 bottles here. There's actually 4, but you know, I told you about my little special mix of satin, and I'll show you how to make that if you're interested in that. And with those clears, we're going to show you how to get yourself from a situation. Let's say you only have this bottle of X1 or XF1, but you really would like it to be kind of glossy. We'll show you how to get that done with the clears. Whether you mix it before or mix it after, and how to create a critical mistake that many people make, and that's mistaking the flat base for the flat clear. Oh, so easy to screw up, and the results are always tragic. And then we're gonna go into mixing the Tamiya Acrylics with other, not only paint brands, but paint types, and show you how those work out. And we're gonna stick with the Tamiya Lacquer thinner and the Mr. Leveling thinner. These are the best two to use with this stuff. If you would like to have the effect of this and all you can get is the Tamiya Lacquer thinner, you can just add a little bit of that retarder and make your own. And we'll show you how to do that too. So we're gonna stick with the better thinners because the stronger these thinners come, the wider the adaptability of the paint becomes. Okay, so for example, you'll never in 100 years use X20A and try to combine a Tamiya acrylic with a Mr. Color lacquer, but you use the lacquer thinners and essentially you're turning that Tamiya acrylic into a lacquer, and so you're going lacquer to lacquer kind of. So that's one of the better things of using the higher end lacquers. But anyway, enough gib gab. Let's get to work here and get through the rest of this Tamiya Acrylics. And then I'll probably take a little break and do some model building because I'm tired of looking at me. I mean, I'm sure you are too. But then we'll get to the airbrushes pretty soon. We still got a few weeks till Christmas, so hopefully I can get through all the paint stuff, or at least most of it. But I know a lot of you are chomping at the bit to find out what's a good airbrush. Then you can get your loved ones who really love you to spend that kind of money on you to find you a good airbrush to get started with. Okay, so let's charge on into it and get to work. If I can just give a quick recap here on the Tamiya acrylic lines. We know that they come in basically, for the most part, 2 sheets, and that's going to be flat and gloss. But very few colors do come in a semi-gloss. We see how they look different from each other, from flat to semi-gloss to the gloss. We know that you can thin it with IPA alcohol. You can thin it with hardware store alcohol, you know, SLX denatured. You can thin it with X20A. You can thin it with the yellow top lacquer thinner. And you can thin it with every product in the Mr. Color line, including their aqueous thinner. This is a highly adaptable paint. It also comes with clears, ranging from flat to semi-gloss to clear. And what you really want to watch out for is to not confuse yourself with their flat clear and their flat base. So the first thing we're going to do before we do anything is I'm going to take this little bit of wing right here. I got a little bit of semi-gloss sprayed on the edge there, and we're going to hit that with the gloss, or I'm sorry, with the flat base. Flat base can cause you big trouble. So just think, the B in base means big trouble if you don't use it right. So I'm going to mix things up for that, and we're going to show you what happens. Your first sign of trouble that you're barking up the wrong tree here is you're going to notice when you stir this up that it never really does clear itself out. That's your first sign of trouble. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take one little drop of this, if I can get one. Come on, get in there. Well, okay, here's what we'll do. We'll just do that. There's a drop, okay? I'm going to mix this in there. That cup's about yay full of thinner, so you can see it is really super thin ratio to the flat base. And then I'm going to spray it on the edge of this wing here. And let's just watch what happens with it. Okay, here we go. Let's see what happens when we hit this with the gloss base. I'm going to hit half of it. All right, we're going to let that dry about a minute, and then we'll be right back. Merry Christmas, Rebel Rooster fans. It turned white. We've got snow.
It's a Christmas miracle.
And as you can see, it's only getting worse as it continues to dry. So I guess if you're one of, I'm sure there's people out there that find a use for this. I mean, just off the top of my head, if you're doing Eastern Front subjects for the European theater of the war, this stuff is great. I mean, it looks like snow. You can spray the edges of your tanks or your aircraft with it. But what it's for, there's this keyword you got to really catch this when you're looking at the word base. So like when you go house paint shopping at Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever you buy your paint, you'll always notice that they got their color samples. And then you take that to the counter, and then they get a can of base. So what you're doing is you're just tinting this base color with another color to make it flat. So essentially what you're doing is, let's say all you've got is this gloss black from Tamiya, and you really wish you had some flat. There's a couple ways you can do it. You can, well, there's a few ways. You can either mix the gloss black with some flat clear before you spray it, or you could spray the black and then hit it with flat clear until it gets where you like. Or you can mix just an ever so light amount of the gloss black in the flat base and get a flat black out of it. There's three ways to do it. Now, the question is, which way do you want to do it? Well, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do here. We're going to try all three of them, and we're going to hit boxes 1, 2, and 3 with each one, and we're going to see which way we like it best. And you can choose what's going to suit you best from there. You know, this is kind of an endless, oh gosh, man, you can watch the, clean this out a little bit here. You can watch people argue about this all day long. But what we're going to do is we're going to try it ourselves, and you're going to see what they all three look like. And of course, you know, my rules aren't hard and fast. I am not Mr. Supermodeler or anything, but I know what's worked for me and what I like. So don't feel afraid to stray out and try it yourself. You might try varying it a little bit. Maybe you might want to make your paint concentration a little thicker or a little thinner. You know what I mean? Just don't be afraid to try other things. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of a roadmap to kind of follow, and then you go where you want from there. So I'm gonna mix these three up here off camera, put them, spray them onto here, and I'll explain how I did it as I point them out to you, and we'll take a look at how they look and see what you like best. Okay, so the first thing we're going to try, or at least I'm going to spray. And I wanted to show you this because remember I told you about we're going to be doing things right this time. Since I'm going to be spraying a gloss, I really want to prepare my plastic better than a quick prep like we've been doing. So you can't see it as much on the primer because it's just a primer. You can see it's a little better here than it is here. But where you can really see it is over here, that light's kind of milky. And then over here, it's nice and crisp, you see? So you can definitely see the plastic is far better prepared. So what I'm gonna do is to get a good glossy shine here, I've prepared that plastic. I took out my, my flits and I polished it with that. And then I took out the Tamiya black tube, the black box as I like to call it, of compound. And that's the finish grade. And so I hit it first with flits, then the Tamiya compound, the finish compound. And if you don't have that readily available to you, then Novus X1 and X2 would do as well, as would some of those Magyar's Auto products. But the big thing is give it a good preparing. If it looks like this, you're not ready for a gloss. If it looks like this, you're ready for a gloss. So I'm going to spray it with the gloss black. I'm going to thin that 2 to 1 because remember you're going to want to go a little thinner when you're using a gloss paint than you would with a flat. Flat, you can go 1 to 1, 1.5 to 1. That's usually where I sit, right around 1.5 to 1. And then with the gloss, I go about 2 to 1. And gloss is one of those things. It's better to go a little thinner than thick. It's always better for you to build up, to get that on a little thinner because you want the thinner to let the paint settle down. If it's really thick, the paint's going to it might get to about here and then finish drying. But if it's thinned out more, it's just going to keep falling down until it's nice and smooth and spread itself out. So that's why the thinner color there. So I'm going to shoot that one there. And then on the other two, what I'm going to do is I am going to pre-mix. Let me turn it over here. I'm going to pre-mix the flat base with some X1 gloss black and spray that. And I'll tell you the ratio I come up with because I rarely do that. So I'm going to do a little experimenting and find the one that works best and then let you know when I show it to you what I did. And then on the other one, I'm just going to pre-mix X1 with the XF86 flat clear. And it shouldn't take but a few drops to get it flattened out there. So, and I'll let you know what ratio I use on that as well. Keeping in mind that that's not a hard and fast rule. If you don't like the level of flat that I got out of it and you want yours flatter, feel free to add more of the XF86 flat clear to it. And then what we're going to do is go to the other side and start mixing paints. But for now, we're going to deal with the clears, starting with flattening out. You know, sometimes there's something you really should tell somebody and you forget to, but the opportunity presents itself for you. And one of those things is what I call the Tamiya Crust. Everybody who's used this paint even once is familiar with it, and that's that it tends to gather and crap up the outside of the bottle, along the edges in there and along your lids. This is why people who use this stuff, they're going to tell you not to shake it, to always stir it. So what I do when I get that mess is I just kind of put a paper towel up here and I get myself some thinner, and it's really not as important what kind of thinner you're using. Just use something kind of strong. So make a circle around the lid like this with it. You know, it's not enough to get in the paint and mix it and mess it up. Myself, I use the hardware store lacquer thinner because I want this done clean and quick. But I'm not putting enough on there to where it's going to get in the paint and mess it up. And then just kind of like loosely put the lid on. Maybe not even a full turn, about half a turn will do you. And I just leave it there a while. And that's going to soften it up. And then I come back and wipe it with a paper towel that's moistened but not wet with some lacquer thinner on the outsides. On the inside, I'll just kind of scrape. I'll just get a little toothpick like this and I'll scrape along the inside, you know, and paper towel that off a couple times. And then I'll get a dry paper towel, fold it up on a square, put it on a tweezer so I don't get my fingers dirty, and I just kind of do that. And that's a really good habit for you to have if you're using Tamiya acrylics, because they do tend to stick up the sides like that. It kind of craps up your bottle a little bit. you know, there's people who go years and they never address it, and you know, that's fine for them. But I wouldn't say I'm a neat freak, but just that kind of thing makes my eye twitch and drives me a little crazy. So it's a good idea to get in the habit of keeping your stuff clean, especially these paints, because the last thing you want to be doing is having it get down there, get a piece of dried crust in there, and then it gets into your paint mix, and then it clogs up your airbrush because it's crusty and it's in the front, and now it can't feed, and then you got problems later on, you know. So it's just a good idea to get in the habit of keeping things, you know, kind of neat like that, which, you know, our benches are pretty good reflections of a generally I don't want to say sloppy, but you know, it's like anything else. You got somebody who does anything solitary, and you know, model building's kind of solitary, and people, you know, you get those weirdos who sit down there in their basement in their underwear and do their modeling, and they have messy desks and all this stuff, and you know, there's the same people that their paint bottles get all crapped up like this. But anyway, it's just a little tip to help you out with this paint. It's not a problem with many others of them, but there's just something about the Tamiya Acrylics where that happens a lot, and it makes your lids hard to open. And you know, like I said, the bigger deal is that you don't want to have this stuff, that dried stuff, falling into your paint mix and then crapping up your airbrush, and by consequence your paint job. So you see, that took me about what, a minute and a half of talking to you, and it's looking good, and it's ready to close up. So we're gonna get to work here. I've got a pretty decent looking gloss there. I gave it 2 coats and I let it dry between. I didn't sand it or anything in between, but we're gonna get to mixing the other 2 up and spraying those. I think what I'm gonna do is just go with the pre-mix on the XF86 flat clear and the gloss black. I'm just gonna go with I'm gonna just say 50-50 on one. So I'll put about 3 drops of flat clear, 3 drops of black. So that's a total of 6 drops of, you know, quotes, paint. And since I'm not carrying a flat net, I'm gonna go 1.5 to that. So 6 times 1.5. Let me take my shoes off and count my toes and my fingers. That's 9 drops. So I'm gonna put 9 drops of thinner and 6 drops of paint, and shoot that. And for the base, I still have no idea on God's green earth or the devil's red hell what I'm gonna do with that. But when I figure that out, I'll let you know that as we spray it. So here we go. I'm gonna get to work on that, and I'll talk to you in a minute. Okay. So here is, on this outer part here, not the Christmas snow, but this one. You see we got a nice, really nice flat black there. And what I did was I took 3 drops of the flat base with 6 drops of the black and 12 drops of Mr. Leveling Thinner. Now, because we were using the Mr. Leveling Thinner, we were able to get a nice flat finish on it, and it leveled off. It didn't powder up on us like the IPA did, or even the X20A. But you can see it really looks nice. It's dead flat, and it's going to be pretty durable. So again, I took 12 drops of Mr. Leveling Thinner, 6 drops of the X1 Gloss Black, and 3 drops of the flat base X21. So what we're going to do with this this next one is I'm going to take 9 drops of the Mr. Leveling Thinner-ish, 9-ish. I mean, you got your eye by now for mixing. You know what you want it to look like, right? You want it to run up the side a little bit, stick for a couple seconds, and by then it's rolling down. But as a starting point, I'm going to go 9 drops of Mr. Leveling Thinner, and I'm going to go 3 drops each of the Gloss Black and the Flat Clear. Now, here's another little trap here some people get into, and it looks like if you tilt it, there you go. It looks, oh, look at it, it's clear. But here's the thing. You see this white stuff in the bottom there? Oops, I'm sorry. Last day you have to put up with that, guys, to get my new stance in. You see that coming down? Make sure you stir it really well. And it's not going to look see-through anymore. It's not going to look transparent. It's not going to look as thick and everything as the flat base, but it definitely will have a whitish color to it. So let me get our 3 drops of this and our 3 drops of paint in here. 1, 2, 3. All right. I'm going to mix these up nicely, and we're going to spray them. And we'll be in busness, right? So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so 9 drops of thinner, Mr. Leveling Thinner. 3 drops of the Flat Clear, XF86. 3 drops paint. Mix it up. One more little thing here, guys. If you buy these mixing cups, like we talked about those metal tins, something like those, but I don't like to waste the thinner. I'd rather just wipe these clean and reuse them when I can. But they come in 2 different kinds, and this is really, it's just one of those stupid little things that drives you crazy. You never think about it till later. But you see the little tick mark inside? Well, I don't know if this is from the milling process, but you hear that little bump there? There's 3 of them, one here, here, here. When you mix, you're going to bump up against them. It's going to splatter paint everywhere. I like to get these little flat ones. These little, not flat, but they're not as transparent as the others, and they're softer. They're just as strong. Nothing's going to eat through them, but there's nothing inside them to mess you up. So I'm just using this one because I'm wearing these out before I use the others. And I got them on Cramazon, or was it TCP Global? But anyway, they're readily available. You don't need to be going to buying these 10 at a time for $5. If you look under medical supplies, medical supply mixing cups, and then put the unit of measure, like 30 millis, a bunch of results are going to come up, and you can just get them from there. Same thing with those sanding sticks. Look for them in beauty supplies as nail buffing pads. Don't look up sanding sticks. These are little things to help you out here and there, because then you got more money to buy models with, right? And that's where you want to spend it anyway, right? So now, let's get, this is the pre-mixed again. In the middle, this is the gloss mixed with the Flat Clear, the XF86. You see I'm being a little more careful, well, a lot more careful with my pattern. Ideally, I'm working a small area, but if you were actually painting something, let's say I was painting from, get my marker out of the way. Let's say I was painting from here to here on a piece, right? You're going to kind of want to start the paint before you get to where you're actually going, because, let me demonstrate it here. Your paint flow, you want to start out here, and then let go after you've passed it. Because if you wait until you're inside the area and then you start, you might get a splotch. But if you've already got it flowing smoothly before and release after, you're going to be doing better. Okay? So that's just a little thing. Well, actually, it's kind of a big thing if you want it to go right. But in a confined area, there's really nothing you can do about it. So, and I like to push my paint. Some people like to come down. I like to push it because I like the overlap. I think the overlap is better for you. And I do change directions once in a while because it fills in better. And again, you see we're building up light coats. We're not flooding it. We're building up light coats, which is better. And another little tip is just with air, when you're going to paint something, just with air, it'll blow the dust off, usually. So here I am with the gloss, and I'm pre-mixing it with the XF86 Flat Clear. And you see what's happening here. And it's going to change just a hair as it dries, but you see what you're coming up with? You're coming up with a semi-gloss. So we go from flat to semi to gloss, just like we did here. And again, that's your preference. If you want it that way, that's what you do. Now you see it's a little splotchy, but it is drying and settling down, but it is going to finish out as a semi-gloss. So if you want a true dead flat, you're going to want to mix your color with the flat base in a cup and then put it in your airbrush and paint it. If you want it not glossy, because remember, we're using gloss black. This is the same paint all the way across, okay? We just changed what we did with it. If you want it glossy, spray it as a gloss. And if you want it semi-gloss, pre-mix your flat clear. If you want it flat, dead flat, mix it with your flat base. Now, next what we're going to do is I'm going to take the gloss portions here on these two fuselage halves, and I'm going to after spray them with the flat clear and see how that looks. And then after that, we're going to take the semi and the flat, and I'll probably use this flat because it came out so good. And then we're going to spray those after with the clear. Then I'm going to use up a little elbow grease and clean something off. I don't know if it's going to be the wing or the fuselage parts, or hell, I might even get lazy and just use horizontal stabs from this thing and use one side per thing. But then I'm going to do the clears right on top of each kind. So again, that's going to be a little bit down the road here in this video, but you can see you see what I mean by adaptable and all the neat things you can do with this stuff. It's just it's great paint, and it's a hell of a lot of fun doing all this. So talk to you again in a bit. This would be a good time for good old Terry to talk to you about the Tamiya Ratios on their instructions. You're not going to see this in their very old kits, but from their, mid-time kits to their current kits, they like to put a ratio. Now, a lot of manufacturers, they have a paint that's their favorite. Some like to use Humbrol. Hasegawa likes to use the Mr. Color. And Tamiya, of course, they're going to want to sell you their paint, so they're going to use their own paint and give you ratios. And you're going to see something like this. And the first time you see that, you're going to be wondering what that is. And it's really basically simple. What you're doing is you're just take that little go in there and separate it. The three colors you're going to use are XF58, XF3, and XF21. And then this is just how many parts of each you're going to mix together. So this is basically three colors mixed to make one color, and you're going 2 parts of XF58, 2 parts of XF3, and 1 part of XF21. So, and they have their little guide at the top of the instructions of what each color is. So here you go there, see. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to pull this wing down, and you can kind of see, let me zoom out a little bit here. This is a good angle to shoot from because you can really see the depth and reflection changes from the flat semi and the gloss. So there's a good beauty flat. Look, there's nothing reflecting off of that. It's a good black. And then in the middle, there's a little bit of light coming back at you, but it's not really reflecting it at you. And then you get to the glossy side, you got pretty good reflection, okay? And you can kind of see, even within this, I like it, because you can see where it was primed and painted gloss. From this angle, it all looks the same, but when you do this, you can see a clear delineation where the part that's primed separates from the part that wasn't. So some people might want to shoot it right onto the plastic straight, and some might want to prime first. That's entirely up to you. Depending on the look you like and how durable you want it to be. It's going to be a little more durable over a primer. And you can bring out, I mean, if you work, you can bring out this kind of a shine and reflection onto the primed part if you want to work on it hard. It just takes a little more plastic preparation, some more time between coats, maybe a little sand between each one. It's definitely not impossible to achieve that. But again, just coming across here again, you're flat, there's just nothing coming back at you. a little bit, and then a lot of it. So this was achieved by doing all of our mixing beforehand. And let me set this up so it'll be pretty more obvious to you. I kind of like to park it on something, but it's not cooperating with me, so I guess we're out of luck. Anyway, so we're going to start with the flat. And remember, we mixed this before we sprayed it. We got the 12 drops of Mr. Leveling Thinner with 6 drops of X1 and 3 drops of X21. Now, if Tamiya were going to draw this on their instructions like I just showed you, they don't care about the thinner. They don't even mention it. But what you would see is you would see this. You would see X1-6, and you would see X21 colon, I meant, 3. So this is what you would see on their instructions, on their formula bar. That's all it is. It's not confusing. So what we did was we mixed the 12 drops of Mr. Leveling Thinner, 6 drops of the X1 Gloss Black, and 3 drops of the X21 Flat Base. All right. Now for the semi-gloss, the one right next to it, where we got a little more, a little bit of sheen, but not much. What we've done there is, again, we pre-mixed before shooting. Took out 9 drops of Mr. Leveling Thinner, 6 drops of X1 Gloss Black, 3 drops of XF86 Flat Clear, not the flat base, the flat clear, this one. All right, and that gave us a nice, I'm going to lift this up, that gave us a nice, not reflective, not flat, mid-range black, which is usually what you'd like to have on your propellers, but again, that's your taste. And then the gloss, and this looks, like I said, it looks pretty okay. And you can see the difference between the primed and the unprimed portion here, see? But again, this was also pre-mixed, very simple formula, a 2-to-1 ratio of thinner to X1, 2 drops of Mr. Leveling Thinner to 1 drop of Gloss Black. Now, this is my preferred way of getting those 3 tones. And the reason is because spraying clears over colors tends to give you trouble with orange peel. You know, what I was calling pebbling before. I like the way it comes out better this way. It just works better that way, and I find it a little more durable to handling than the other way around. You don't tend to get the fingerprints in there and gumming it up and everything. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take this wing here, and I'm going to wipe this clean again and reprime it and do everything all over again. And I'm just going to spray straight across it with a semi-gloss black. I'll use their X18. And in fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'll do you one better. I'll pre-mix it the way I got this one. I'll get their gloss black and I'll mix it with the XF86 first, just to give you a better gloss, semi-gloss black to work with. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the 4 levels of clear, or maybe 3 of them. We're going to hit it with the flat clear. We're going to hit it with the satin clear I invented. It's like the Vikings. Someone probably already did it, but you know, I'm the first one to say I did it. And then their semi-gloss clear, and then their clear. We'll see what differences these 4 make, and then you can kind of see whether you want to do your clear coat, your clear colors, mixed it with your paint before you shoot it or after you've already shot it. So, okay, I'm going to get another cup of coffee because I'm starting to drop off here, and we'll see you again shortly. Okay, hey everybody, while the paint is patiently drying on this wing over here, let me just show you something. You've seen how much painting we've been doing during this thing, right? The last time I cleaned this airbrush was before this started, right? I haven't done anything but, you know, swish it around in the cup and backflow a little bit. Let me just show you. I'm going to take the needle off again. I hope this can be caught. But if I can show you, probably in the middle it's going to show up better. Let me get this thing to focus on it. That's the perils of iPhone SE technology, but this needle is really in good shape. Look how clean this thing is. Remember, after just like one quick little, what did we have, a 1.5 square inch of Vallejo painted, and that thing was just gummed up. I had to, you know, kind of pull really hard to get the thing even to come out of the airbrush, and it was loaded with paint. We shot it, we washed, we backflowed, we did all kinds of things, scrubbed it, and it just kept painting because there's so much in there. Now I'm just going to wipe the needle here on this paper towel soaked with Mr. Leveling Thinner on my bare hands, which I know better, but you know, sorry. Just that little bit of there on there. Now I'll give it a second wipe. And let me turn it inside out to keep it honest. So it's got good strong thinner still on there. And there's nothing there. See how clean that came? And I didn't even really need to do that. I'm just showing you this because I'm really big on proper ratios and you know, thinning ratios and good paint. You do not need to be wearing yourself out, taking out the needle, unscrewing the guts, taking the caps off, pulling the trigger out, just, you know, going through all this junk. I paint a lot, and I take these airbrushes apart once per year, and it's more out of, you know, retentive habit than anything else. But you just should not be needing to do that. So if you got well-thinned paint and you're using good paint, you're not going to need to be doing that. Okay, so we've got our semi-gloss paint. It looks glossy right now because it's still drying, but once it's dried out the rest of the way, we'll get to work on the after shooting. The coffee is brewing, and dinner is, I smell chicken soup, one of my favorites. That's getting ready. So after the chicken soup and the coffee, I'm going to be back in my usual form, my usual lively form, and we'll have more fun doing this, and we'll wrap it up. And then we'll do a quick recap on the very important finer points of this paint, and then we'll move on into either airbrush selection or maybe jump into lacquers. But that'll be that, so see you in a bit. So the question comes up, if we can pre-mix a beautiful flat like this by mixing the flat base with the gloss black, and then the gloss black with a flat clear to get the nice semi, and then just spraying a gloss to get a nice gloss. What's to stop us from mixing flat black with a whole lot of clear gloss to achieve a gloss finish? Well, here's what's stopping you. The best you're going to get is a really nice semi-gloss out of it. While I was waiting for the paint to dry on that other wing, I went ahead and did just that. And I mixed a ton of X22 clear gloss with a little bit of XF1 flat gloss. And the best I can get is this very nice semi-gloss finish, which doesn't look a whole lot different than the semi-gloss we got from pre-mixing. The gloss with the flat. So basically, it's easier to tone it down than it is to tone it up. All right. So what we've got now, we've got this very nice semi-gloss black. See, it came up. Remember, it looked all shiny. I said it's going to come out to a perfect semi-gloss, and it did. And what we're going to do is we're going to start out with shooting over it with XF86 flat clear. Then we're going to go to my custom mix of Satin Clear And then we're gonna go to the semi-gloss clear X35, and then finally the X22 over that. So we're gonna see over a semi-gloss coat what these different shades of clear are gonna do. In the meantime, just kind of put this in the back of your head. If you're ever at the hobby shop and there's someone with a gun to your head and they're saying, okay, for the rest of your life, you can buy either gloss black or flat black. I would say to go with the gloss black because you can always bring it down with a flat base and a flat clear to get the mid and the flat, you know, the semi-gloss and the flat that you want. But if you buy the flat black, you're never going to get it to look nice and glossy like this by just mixing clears with it. The question is, can we do it by spraying a gloss clear after? And that we are about to answer. Okay, everybody, I'm soaked, I'm coffeeed, and we're ready to continue. As advertised, we have the wing painted with that nice semi-gloss that we made by getting the X1 gloss clear and using the X21 flat base pre-mixed and shot together at the ratio we mentioned before. We're going to shoot flat clear here, and that's going to be the XF86. We're going to shoot hey, wait a minute, good old Terry, what are you doing? There's two boxes there. Hey, well, let me tell you what. On one side, we're going to shoot it with Mr. Rapid Thinner, the red label. And down here with Mr. Leveling Thinner, and we're going to see if it makes a difference. Then we're going to go to my custom mix of the Satin Clear, which I made 50% out of their Tamiya X35 semi-gloss and half XF86 flat clear, 50-50. Then over here we're going to shoot their X35 semi-gloss clear, and then go all the way over here to shoot the X22 clear. These are thinned at 2:1, 2 parts thinner to 1 part of the tone. Feel more than free to go thinner if you'd like. It's not bad to go a little thinner with the clears and just keep working with them slowly. So, as they say in the Church of the Holy Modeler, not to sacrilege or anything, let us spray. We're going to start with the Mr. Rapido with the flat. Now you're shooting flats, boys and girls, children of all ages, shoot them a little farther away than you normally would with a color or a gloss, because you want it to kind of dry. Oops, there goes. Hey, just we're down to hours with my shaky stand. You want it to kind of be a little drier when it hits it, to give you a good flat look. And if you shoot it too close, it gives it too much time to level off and kind of turn more into a semi than a flat. And you can do light dust coats, really light ones. Just keep doing light ones over and over. They'll build up on each other and get flatter as you go. Okay, so just a few of those. I am going to, well, I'll give it a few more here. All right, there we are. Now let me just clean that out. And it's a little bit loud with the blower, but I got to keep this stuff away from me. You know what I mean, Vern? I don't want to get a lung tumor or anything. Okay, that takes care of that one. Now we're going to go on to the flat, the XF86 with the Mr. Leveling Thinner. All right, give that a little shot. Get it going. Same thing, opposite side. Oops, looks like I didn't give it a good enough blast. You see the little dots I gave myself there? Well, we'll live with it. All right, 2, and then 3, and then 4. Now we're even with those. And I'll clean this out. Spray that the rest of the way. Give that a little shot in the cup to clean it. And we're just going to keep doing this for each different shade. And now with this one, now we're going to move a little closer because we're not shooting the flat anymore. Now we're going on to the Satin Clear. All right. That's going to be down the middle here. But I'm going to go, I did it again. Dagnabbit, Terry. I don't think my needle is seated from that demonstration I gave you a minute ago. Let me push that in really quick here. All right. All right, there you go. Now we're talking business. I'm going to go a little closer, but not, you know, color close. And I'm just going to not really dust it, not really make it wet either. I'm going to say 3 inches away. And by the way, when I'm doing clears, I kind of go a little bit lighter on the pressure than I normally do. Somewhere between 10 and 15. Because I just don't want it to completely dry on the way there when I'm doing the flats, and I don't want it to be so wet that it gets pushed around with the glossier ones, because this is something where it's really easy to screw it up because you might end up pushing the paint across it too fast and being too close. And then you got puddles and all that other garbage. And your clears, remember, they're going to tell on you. They're going to tell on you because there's nothing they have to hide anything except maybe your flats a little bit. But now we're up to the semi-gloss, and this is the 35x35. I should probably shoot it where you can see me shooting it. There we go. So you can see I'm kind of like really not wet, not really dry there. Give that a little help drying. It's kind of funny, semi-gloss on semi-gloss actually does make a little bit of a difference. You'd think that it would be kind of a moot point, kind of like you know, putting water on a wet paper towel or something, but it actually does have a little bit of effect. Not enough to make it gloss, but I'd say a little glossier. And now we're going to take the X22, and this one I thinned a little bit more. I went about 2.5 to 1 on this one, because the gloss you really want to be good to this stuff and give it a good chance to even itself out. Because this one you're going to hit kind of wet. Just like before, we're going to give it a little tack, just like it was a color gloss, right? And then this is going to go on wet. And you can kind of see I let it sit too long and pushed a little puddle along there. Another little use for this X22 clear for you guys. You could put that over your instruments after you've done your instrument panels. Just put a dab of it on each instrument panel, and it'll look like glass sitting over there, and add a little depth to them, make them look a little better. And I also touch it to my gun sights to make that look a little better too. So I'm going to let this is going to be a little bit, because the gloss, I'm going to give it a couple coats, and I'm not going to make you wait and watch it, because, you know, watching paint dry is as exciting as watching paint dry, right? So I'm just going to let that finish it, and then we're going to get back and look at the results, and then final chapter, we're going to mix a paint with other type paints and other type brands and see how that goes. And we're back for the closeout on the clears. So what's the deal, McNeil? Well, let's take a quick look at it. You can see where we sprayed the flat clear with the Mr. Rapid thinner. It actually comes a little flatter than spraying it with the Mr. Leveling thinner. Now, if you bring it up close to the camera, you can really see the difference, see? It's not as flat as if you had shot it flat from the get-go on purpose, like this one, you know. But it does a good job of toning down, it does a good job of toning down something that's a little bit too shiny for you. And the Mr. Leveling thinner, because it lets it sink down flatter and nicer and everything, it gets a little more, I wouldn't say sheen because it's flat, but, you know, I should say a little less dead flat than the other one. Now the satin, you can see it sits right between, and this is really hard because I don't have the benefit of daylight for this. I have to use my artificial lamps, but you can kind of see it sits right between the flats and the semi-gloss. So if this is too dead for you and that's a too alive for you, this is pretty nice. And I love to put this over for example, a World War II fighter that's been there a little while but hasn't been lived in yet. It's not factory new, it's been out a couple times but it hasn't gotten beaten yet. Then the semi-gloss takes you over here, and here's our X22 over the, and isn't that kind of interesting? The semi-gloss over semi-gloss actually did do a little something. I would say it gives it more depth really than a change in sheen. It kind of brings the black out a little more, darker black, than it does actually changing the sheen. Like if you look at this semi-gloss, you see how it looks a little darker black now? It kind of brings the depth of the color out a little better. And that would work across the board for any color you used it on. And here's the X22 over the semi, which really turned out fairly nice. And I only gave it a couple of quickies. I didn't spend a whole lot of time, but it's good and dry. So not quite as slick as doing it from the get-go, but pretty darn good. And X22 is one of the better clears out there. If I was going to pick an acrylic clear, gloss, I'd go with X22 or Aqua Gloss by Allclad. I use both of them because I use them for different things. But so far as the glosses go, there's a ton of acrylic glosses out there, but those are the two I like. Like I said, don't use it because I said so. Just give you a little something to look into. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to take 4 paints, also readily available out there in the market. We're going to take AK Interactive, the RC Real Color Series, Acrylic Lacquer, as they put on their paint rack. We're going to take Mr. Hobby Aqueous alcohol-based water-soluble acrylic, and we are going to take Mr. Color Lacquer and Tamiya Lacquer, and we are going to mix these with the Tamiya acrylic paint. I don't know if I'm going to use the semi-gloss or the flat. I'm not going to use the gloss though, because I want to get I've already done this last night, and I liked the way it turned out, but it was a little bit too, I don't know, too glassy. So I don't want it flat, but I don't want it shiny either. But we'll use one of those two. We're going to mix them up, and I'm going to be using I'm going to be using Tamiya's lacquer thinners for that. And the reason I'm using that is because we know that the X28 is not strong enough to work with a lacquer. And if this Tamiya lacquer thinner, yellow top again, slightly weaker than the Mr. Color Series thinners, if it works on the Tamiya lacquer thinner, we know it's going to work on the Mr. Color Series thinners. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to take a guess. My first mix is going to be with the AK Real Colors RLM04. It's a yellow. Take a guess what it's going to turn out like color-wise, and I'll bet you don't get it. So I'm just going to go take a quick break here, and we'll get to work on that. Hallelujah, guys, the newsstand is here. I'm using it as we speak. Look, I can do this, and I'm not bumping anything. All right, here's the fun part, mixing the colors. I already pre-mixed the other three, but I did want you to see this one because I wanted to give you a challenge. See if you can guess what's going to happen to it, what it's going to turn out like. And this is why it's a good idea to kind of test your color mixes beforehand. So we got black and yellow. What do you think is going to come out of this, huh? 2. I'll tell you the ratios in just a second. I'm just going to kind of, here we are. All right, black and yellow. We're going to see what happens with that. You're not going to, I know none of you got it right. So, except one of you who's probably giving a smart-ass remark thinking, oh, I'll just say something so crazy it'll never happen. Well, you might be the one who's right. It actually makes a beautiful chromate green, interior green. If you do it thin enough, it's an olive drab. But here, let me show you. Here it is. Last night. Look at this. This is a interior green. I don't know how black and yellow made that, but there it is. If I come over here, give me a second and I'll find it. There it is. Here's the Mr. Color interior green. There you go. I know it's just a lid, but I'll even open it to prove it. Show I'm right, even though I'm always right. Look at that. Who would, some of you guys remember John Madden, football announcer, old football coach, larger than life personality. Loved the guy. But he used to say, who'd have thunk? So who'd have thunk that black and yellow was going to give you an interior green, huh? I didn't. I went a little thin on it, so it's going to look more like an olive drab here, but always test out your colors before you go shooting them, because you don't really, you don't really know what you're going to get. So, all right, now what we got in this tube is the first one, and that's going to be the I used the Tamiya X18 semi-gloss black. Gosh, this is so much easier with this new stand here, guys. And I mixed it 50-50 with the RLM 04 AK Interactive Real Colors series. Another very good paint. But we'll talk about that when it's its turn. We'll put that in the cup. We'll close up our tube. We'll put it down. And where's my wing? Where's my wing? Where's my wing? There it is. And this is overgrade primer. I hope I made enough to cover it. So we'll start with the inside one on this. Actually, you know what? Yeah, let's do that. So let me turn my blower on so I get this away from me and I don't, just one day I don't make films anymore and everyone wonders what happened to me and they find out that I grew a lung inside my lung and that was the end of me because I was careless. So, I'm just kind of spraying. You can see it sprays really smooth. And over here on the side, let's do another test with this thing since it's there and see if I can move it very easily. Oh, look at that. See the tubes are sitting over there on their side waiting for their turn to action. And while they're waiting, we're going to see the reason I've done that also, besides just wanting to have everything ready, is I want to see how well they stay soluble with each other, because sometimes things get along well in the beginning and then over time they start having trouble with each other and coagulation might start or they start separating. It's kind of, well, it's like people, some people you're like, oh, this person's so cool, they're awesome, they're just like good old Terry. Well, then after spending some time with them, you find out they're not. You don't like them anymore. You just wish you hung out with me. So anyway, here you go. Made a nice green out of it, and we can see the AK Real Colors and the Tamiya paints. Definite good match. Well, leave it to me to get a new stand and still have the same old problem. They're a good match and they get along well. So very happy with that. We're going to put that in the so far so darn good category. I'm just going to give the brush a quick shot, clean it out, get some of this stuff out of here. Let me use the blower, the other blower, the extractor, because I don't want to do anything stupider than I usually do here. All right, next up, we're going to take the what's that tube say? That tube says. Yeah, I don't know what that says. I'll save that for last. Here's one that's easy to read, 72. This is going to be the Mr. Color Lacquer paint. This is their intermediate blue. And I mixed this also 50-50 with the Tamiya paint, the Tamiya Acrylic. And going to shoot this one now. I made this a little bit too thin, so I better back up a little bit. See I got that that mess I made there, that fisheye or spider web. I'm a little bit too close to it, so I just back up a little bit. And that kind of takes care of itself there, huh? And it sat well in the tube while it was waiting its turn. But of course, good practice habits, right? I still want to give it a shake. I'm going to give that a second to dry. And if you don't mind the noise, it's going to be loud for just a second because I need to open the garage door to breathe. I'll be right back. All right, and here I am again. See how quick I am? All right, and we'll shoot it again. And you know what else? Something when you mix colors, I shouldn't say mix colors, but when you mix Tamiya with other paint brands, it really kind of gives it a nicer texture too, especially with the lacquers. But you know, lacquers, it's like putting you know, someone who can bowl 300 on a bowling team with someone who bowls 150. Suddenly the guy who bowls 150 is a lot better a bowler, right? Or at least on the team scoreboard it looks like that. So the lacquer brings out the better properties that are there. So, and we can see that's a little, looks like orange peely. It's still drying, but you can see it did a nice job there. So we'll clean this out. And next up, we're going to take the, next up I think it's going to be the Tamiya Lacquer. The Tamiya Lacquer, let's make sure I got it right. Yep. Next up is the Tamiya Lacquer. We're using their LP Series LP6 Pure Blue. It's pure blue. It's actually a really, it's a color that's great for identification stripes on certain things. It's nothing I'd use much. It's good for unit markings though. I mean, that's a pretty intense blue. It almost looks like a cobalt blue in a sense, huh? But anyway, here it comes. It sat beautifully in the tube, waiting its turn, and I'm gonna get that in here. And we're gonna shoot it here. Pretty good. Change my direction again. We'll give that just a second to dry. Maybe give it a little help with the airbrush, just hit it with air. You can kind of see it drying right before your eyes. Like a magic trick, huh? And there we go. We'll give that had a chance now, and we'll do this and that. Spray it out. And the last one we've got is the Mr. Hobby Aqueous, the alcohol-based, water-soluble acrylic paint. Now, something with this stuff, and we're using H67 light blue. I'm probably going to forget to tell you this when we get to this series of paints, so I'm going to tell you again. When you're mixing this stuff, you're going to open this jar, some of these jars, even the black sometimes, it'll just look white or pink. Going to give it a good stir. The stuff gets really thick And I'm looking for a word here. It'll feel like it dried in the bottom. It didn't. You just got to scrape that bottom really good as you mix it, as you stir it up. Don't try to shake it. You're not going to be able to shake it into mixing well. You got to really stir that up good and scrape the bottom good and hard. And I mixed this again, same rate, same thing, half and half, with the Tamiya acrylic. Gave it one final shake here before I'm putting it in the airbrush. Quick shot to get it going, and we're going to spray that. So there's a few guys out there with some YouTube channels. Some have some actual websites, some have Facebook pages, some have a combination of all of them. These guys got kind of the college professor hat. They're really good with explaining the chemical makeup of these things and the interactions and all that stuff. You might want to hunt around and check them out and see what they have to say if you're interested in getting deeper into it. I mean, it's interesting. I don't know. It's interesting stuff, but it's not something that I get crazy about because I like to keep things simple. But for those of you who like to know more about things, not just that about something, but the why, these guys are great for telling you that. And they will explain to you the chemical properties of these paints and what they're actually based in, what they're actually made of, how things interact with each other, how the chemical bonds occur. They're out there, they're not too hard to find, and if you want a deeper understanding of why things turn out certain ways with paints, they're good people to check out. And you can also toss a fish hook in some of the modeling groups out there on Facebook, and just throw out a question out there like, hey, does anybody know why, the X20A won't, make a lacquer paint work with Tamiya Acrylics, even though it's a thinner made for the Tamiya Acrylics? And someone's going to jump in there, and they're going to tell you all about it, and you'll get your answer. But when it comes to this stuff, I mean, there's certain things that I get crazy knowledgeable and excited about and everything, but paint's not one of them. I just like to use the stuff and try things out with it, and when I get to the result I want, I'm happy with it and I log it and everything, but I don't get too deep into the why did that happen. I just know that it happened, and that's good enough for me. So anyway, I'm going to give this a minute or two to dry, and I'm going to start cleaning things up here, and we'll take a look at how it looks. But preliminarily, if there's such a word, pretty darn good, huh? Pretty darn good. So we're gonna let these finish drying while I clean up my nasty little mess here, and then we'll wrap this up. Okay, so let's look at it. It's been drying about 20 minutes, and there's not a bad one in the bunch. The AK, Mr. Color, the Tamiya Lacquer, the Mr. Color Aqueous, every swinging one of them came out beautifully. And that is a beautiful satin sheen. You've got no orange peeling, you've got no ridges, you got no nothing. I mean, this is just beautiful. So it actually does advantage, in my opinion, to mix Tamiya with other paints, because it brings out the best in it. Looks better than it did by itself, using its own stuff. Not that this looks bad, but I mean, when you compare it to what it looks like after you've mixed it with the others, it's just beautiful. Additionally, I will throw, now that I've taken the tape off, you can see, where's my pencil? You can see here, and here, and here, and there, where the tape was, where the original semi-gloss coat was, and you can see the different sheets. Here's the X22 now that it's fully dried. It lost quite a bit of its advantage, didn't it? It kind of, I mean, it's great up close. If you put it right there, I mean, it looks it reflects nicely. But as soon as you back off, it just kind of goes away. But so you can see, if you're going to gloss, just gloss from the get-go. Don't try to bring a gloss up from a flat. But it is extremely easy to go from, you know, the other direction, to go from a gloss to a flat. But anyway, see, the Mr. Leveling or the Mr. Rapid thinner dries quicker, probably a little bit before it gets there, and it gives you a better flat than the flat with the Mr. Leveling thinner. So then the satin mix I made is kind of right in between the semi-gloss and the flats. More than anything, it really brings the depth of the black out. Then there's the semi-gloss, and of course the X22 gloss. So that's pretty much the end of our testing run on this.
Well, Squidward, what have we learned today?
Well, we learned why everybody's going goo-goo over this paint for so many years. It's a very good paint. It's Tamiya Acrylics. Comes in 3 sheens, though most colors will only appear in 2, and that's a flat and a gloss. But very few do have a semi-gloss. We learned that this paint is highly adaptable. It can be thinned with denatured or SLX alcohol. It can be thinned with IPA, with X20A, with their proprietary lacquer thinner, as well as the entire line of Mr. Color series thinners, from Mr. Rapid to their regular thinner to Mr. Leveling thinner and their Mr. Hobby Aqueous thinner. We also learned that the stronger the thinner that you go with, starting from the Tamiya Lacquer thinner to the Mr. Color lines, the more adaptable the paint becomes. We learned that there is a retarder available for this paint if you want it to dry slower and give you a smoother finish. We learned there's a series of clears out there for it. There is the flat clear, the semi-gloss clear, the clear gloss, and a flat base. They are mixable with each other, and we can make our own. We learned to pay particular attention to the flat base, which for most people, 99% of the users of this paint, is just what they consider a wasted purchase, because they spray it not knowing that it's a base, thinking it's a clear, and they get snow on the wing. They throw the bottle away thinking it's useless, not realizing that you can actually do great things with it by pre-mixing it with their X1 gloss. You can get a nice, good flat coat. Beautiful flat coat. So this is not a wasted purchase. You just got to use it on purpose. You can then mix their flat clear with their gloss color to give yourself a nice semi-gloss color. And you can also shoot their gloss colors straight being with nothing else except thinner, and give yourself a pretty nice gloss. We've also learned that this paint is compatible with other types and other brands of paints. Again, by using the stronger thinners, the Tamiya Lacquer Thinner Yellow Top, and any of the Mr. Color series, that we can get this paint to actually look better than it would have looked had we only used their proprietary paints. A remarkably smooth, beautiful finish. Chiefly, also, we have learned that plastic preparation is critical. It is, in my opinion, the most overlooked thing in coming up with a good paint job. Because frankly, it's not fun to polish plastic. It's boring, it's tedious. Then you've got to go into all of these recesses and scrape the dried polish out. But if you want a good paint job, you've got to prepare your plastic. So the long and short of it, the Tamiya acrylic paints a tremendous step up from these water-based acrylics that so many people buy when they begin, because that's what people tell them to buy, because they've never had a problem with it or whatever reason. Far better paint here available. It's affordable, it's readily available, highly adaptable. And one last thing that I'm going to show you is one last look at my needle. You saw now what we did, and I even mixed it with other paints. And you remember the cleaning nightmare from the water acrylics? We have a nearly spotless needle from nothing more than using a good paint and proper thinning ratios. So, to answer Squidward's question, we've learned a lot of valuable things today. Tamiya acrylic paint, you cannot go wrong by trying this paint out. I strongly recommend it. But now that we've covered this one, we're going into the world of lacquers next. And if you thought this was good, you're really gonna like the lacquers. Thanks for sticking with me. I think this has been, what, about 2 hours? I hope it's done you well. That was a little bit more than I thought it was gonna be. Anyway, I hope it's helped you out to go through all of this. This is a great paint. This is probably going to be the longest one of all the paint series, purely because this paint has so many capabilities. As we saw, when we get into the lacquers, even though lacquers, in my opinion, and you're probably going to be wondering how, but they're better paints even than this Tamiya acrylic. The features are a little more limited. You're basically down to different types of thinners and the paint themselves. They got a few quirks, which doesn't take much time to explain, but for example, they're more difficult to chip than these Tamiya acrylics are, and I didn't address the chipping on this because we're more sticking into the airbrush basic stuff. Chipping and stuff goes more with weathering and everything. So for now, just keep using your pencils and sponges, and we'll talk about chipping when we get to there. But the big takeaways from this is the thinning ratio for this generally 1.5 to 2 to 1 will do you good. And you saw when I got the mess made from being too close, just back off a little bit and the paint will take care of itself in there. Give it some good time to dry. The stronger, the thinner you go, the more capabilities you're going to get from the paint. And frankly, I really do believe the more I look at this, this is really good. You mix it with other paints and it really brings out the best that this stuff has to offer. Not that it's bad by itself by any stretch of the imagination, but I mean, I'm really impressed by mixing this. I mean, the AK, the Mr. Color, the Tamiya Lacquer, and the Aqueous all did fantastic with it. And there's other paint lines out there. There's what is it, SMS, Life Colors, all these others that I didn't experiment with them, but this really is my favorite, second favorite, well, kind of second and a half favorite. My very first favorite paint out there I really can't get my hands on right now, and the shipping kills me on it, so I just stick with the Mr. Color lacquers. But if I'm to pick one paint out of the whole world of acrylic paints, I would definitely go with the Tamiya Acrylics. If I was to get asked what one thinner I would use with it, it would be Mr. Leveling Thinner. And if I was to be asked what one primer would I use, I would pick the Mr. Surfacer 1500. That's just me, you're going to get other opinions out there, and it's nobody's right, nobody's wrong, except the people who use this crap for airbrushing. But this isn't to say the paint has no drawbacks. I talked about it earlier. it's just no good for hand brushing. I mean, there are people who do it, and they do it well, but they, like I said, it's one of those things you just have to practice, and it's kind of a process to do. I'd rather just get a water-based acrylic and a paintbrush and use that. But you'd not catch me dead airbrushing it. So you see, your paint choice is going to depend on what you're doing with it. As airbrushers, you're of course going to be going with a better paint like this than the water acrylics, I hope. But you know, if that's what you do, if water acrylics do the job for you, good for you. It's your model, you know, you do it the way you like. But eventually you're going to want to get better, and you're going to want to look at your work and be proud of it. You're going to want to feel like you are making progress, and the only way to do that is to move forward. And this was a huge step forward in the world of paint. So anyway, enough harping. Thank you so much for giving me the better part of 2 hours or whatever this turns out to be. I sure do appreciate you coming along with me on this. If you liked it, like and subscribe. And hey, it wouldn't piss me off if you told a friend or 100 either. If you didn't like it, I'm trying, I'm getting there. And don't tell anybody you didn't like it. So, hey, have a great week coming up here, and we'll see you on the next time. Thanks.